All right, welcome back to the Kitchen Brigades. Settle in. Today's explainer is a deep dive into the absolute ultimate test of patience, precision, and discipline. You know, some dishes you're going to learn in your careers exist purely for flavor. Others are all about sheer luxury. But the dish we're tackling today, it exists specifically to test you. It's basically a mirror held up to a chef's soul. So, grab your notebooks because we are doing a complete masterclass on a true cornerstone of classical French cuisine, the consommé. So let's just get right into it. Why on earth is a simple, clear broth a chef's literal worst nightmare? I mean, at first glance, consommé seems deceptively simple, right? It looks like just a bowl of clear liquid. But that simplicity is exactly what makes it so terrifying. Because here's the thing. In this dish, your mistakes absolutely cannot hide. You can't just cover up a flaw with a heavy sauce or distract the diner with a beautiful garnish. No way. It is a completely naked, vulnerable display of your technique, and that makes it the most unforgiving trial you're ever going to face behind the stove. Okay, let's quickly run through our syllabus for today's explainer. First, we're looking at the chef's greatest test. Second, aristocratic's clear soup. Third, the natural filter, which is the raft technique. Fourth, unforgiven culinary mistakes. And finally, the pure essence of perfection. Let's jump straight into part one, the chef's greatest test. Before we can even begin to master the technique, we have to deeply understand the true enemy of this dish, which is cloudiness. While some items on your menu are just there to showcase a great seasonal ingredient, consommé is on the menu to test you, the chef. The goal is absolute, uncompromising visual perfection. Think about the chemistry of a standard stock. When you boil bones and vegetables, yeah, you extract incredible flavor, but you also pull out a massive mess of microscopic elements. We're talking suspended proteins, fat droplets floating up to the surface, vegetable fibers, and just countless microscopic particles. Now, in a normal rustic soup, that's perfectly fine. It gives it body. But in a consommé, they create an unacceptable, murky cloudiness. Your job, your only job here, is to completely eliminate every single one of those microscopic particles without losing a drop of that flavor. Moving on to part two, aristocracy's clear soup. To really get why we go to such obsessive lengths for this dish, we gotta take a quick trip back to the hyper-competitive kitchens of the French aristocracy in the 17th and 18th centuries. Historically, food was a massive visual indicator of social class. On one hand, you had these heavy, cloudy, rustic soups. These were the meals of the commoners, hearty, thick, and meant to sustain a day of really hard labor. But in the elite courts of nobility, culinary elegance was strictly associated with clarity, refinement, and absolute purity. Being able to serve a perfectly transparent, crystal-clear broth was the ultimate status symbol. It essentially proved to everyone at the table that the Lord's kitchen had the ridiculous luxury of time, the most expensive ingredients, and the highly skilled labor required to waste all of that just for aesthetic perfection. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Auguste Escoffier and Marie-Antoine Carême, literally the absolute titans of classical French cuisine, declared consommé to be one of the highest demonstrations of classical technique. So students, when you attempt this dish, you aren't just making soup. You are participating in a centuries-old tradition. You're carrying the historical and technical weight of the actual masters who wrote the rules of the kitchen you're standing in right now. Which brings us to part three, the natural filter, better known as the raft technique. So, how do we actually achieve the impossible here? We are stepping out of history and right into culinary chemistry. We're going to solve this cloudiness problem, but not with physical sieves or modern mechanical filters. No, we use pure food science. The absolutely crucial thing you need to understand is this foundational term, the raft. As the legendary food scientist Harold McGee explains in On Food and Cooking, the raft is essentially a magical, edible natural filtration system. It's this intricate, interlocking matrix of coagulated proteins, ground meat, and vegetables that floats right to the top of your pot. It literally acts like a living sponge that traps every single one of those impurities we talked about earlier. Class, pay incredibly close attention here, because this is the exact textbook procedure you must memorize. Step 1, you absolutely must start with cold stock. It has to be cold. Step 2, you whisk in your clarification mixture. That's your raw ground meat, egg whites, and your mirepoix vegetables. Step 3 is honestly where chefs make or break their careers. You heat it slowly. As that temperature gradually rises, the proteins in the egg whites and the meat start to unfold and bond together. That's coagulation. And as they bond, they float upward, dragging every microscopic impurity with them. Which brings us to step 4, the actual filtration. That slow rise in temperature is non-negotiable. If you rush it, you fail. Simple as that. But if you exercise that patience,
The payoff is just breathtaking. As that raft solidifies on the surface, watch what happens right underneath it. This perfectly transparent, beautifully distilled pure essence slowly reveals itself. All that murky, cloudy stock just magically clears up. I'm telling you, it is one of the most deeply satisfying things you will ever experience behind a stove.
Let's get very real for a second as we move into part 4, unforgiven culinary mistakes.
Okay, there is a massive but here, and I need everyone listening carefully. This process is overwhelmingly fragile. Write these down because these are the fatal errors you must avoid at all costs. First, boiling too aggressively. Those violent bubbles, they will literally tear your delicate protein filter to shreds. Second, breaking the raft once it's actually formed. Third, stirring the liquid. Never ever stir it once that raft begins to set. And finally, temperature fluctuations. Any single one of these mistakes will completely shatter your edible filter, and boom, all those trapped fats and proteins get violently churned right back into your soup. And here is the brutal truth. Once that clarity is lost, there is rarely a way back. You can't just strain it out through a finer sieve. You can't fix it. Hours of simmering your stock, expensive meats, your entire morning's prep work, all of it disappears in a matter of seconds. You literally have to throw it out and start from scratch. This insanely high-stakes fragility is exactly why the strictest culinary academies on the planet use this specific dish as their ultimate final exam. It tests if you have the discipline to follow the rules, even when nobody is watching.
Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, the pure essence of perfection. Which brings up a really logical question for any modern chef. In an era where we have high-speed centrifuges, molecular gastronomy, and laboratory-grade microfilters, why do 3-star Michelin kitchens still practice this highly ceremonial, totally inefficient technique? Because, Brigade, creating a classical consommé isn't about the expensive equipment you have in your kitchen, it is entirely about human control. A flawless consommé proves your mastery of heat management. It proves your patience. It proves your precision. And honestly, above all, it proves your restraint. Your ability to just not touch something and let the process happen. It's way less of a recipe and much more of a personality test for whoever happens to be wearing the apron. And the result on the palate is this incredible dual transformation. Yes, the visual impurities are totally gone, but those harsh, muddy flavors, they're completely absorbed by the egg whites and the raft, too. So what you're left with is just pure essence. It tastes so incredibly light and delicate on the tongue, yet it's surprisingly intensely deep in its savory flavor. It's literally a paradox in a bowl. I want to leave you with this bit of parting wisdom from the classical masters. True mastery is not about adding complexity, but removing everything unnecessary. You know, young chefs so often think that great cooking means using tweezers to carefully place 20 different ingredients on a plate. But the truest form of culinary art, the real historical obsession of our entire craft, is distillation. It's having the sheer confidence to present something completely unadorned, relying on nothing but flawless technique. So I'll leave you with this final thought as we conclude our explainer today. The loudest, most complex-looking dishes are rarely actually the most difficult to pull off. The real question is, are you ready to face the quietest yet hardest dish in the kitchen? Next time you look into a bowl of perfectly clear consommé, I hope you don't just see broth. I hope you see centuries of obsession, relentless discipline, and the absolute pinnacle of culinary art. Class dismissed, Brigade. Keep learning, keep refining, and I will see you in the next explainer.